everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and this is my review for Scott Pilgrim, because I have finally, officially read all of Scott Pilgrim, 1 through 6. As you can see, I have the full color hardcover editions. I've loved the series ever since seeing this movie here, which I realized I took this out just for this video, and I love this sticker that I have on here because it says, plays on your PS3. I thought that was really funny, so I can never take that off because that's going to make me laugh forever now, like, it plays on your PlayStation 3. Man, that's old. 10 years. I think it's almost been 10 years since this movie even came out. But it's crazy. I love the movie. I love Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game, which I don't have a physical copy of, but I will at the end of the year. So as long as things go right, by the end of this year, I will have a review up for the Limited Run Games KO edition, I believe, which is like a giant clamshell case with like a million things in it. And when you open it up, it actually plays music. It has Scott, Kim, Steven and Ramona on it, and it has lights and it plays music. So I'll have a review of that as long as that actually goes into production and ships as it's supposed to. Hopefully soon, like maybe in a month or two, because it's supposed to be Q4, so that's where we are now. So we'll see what happens. So hopefully that comes out, and I'll be able to do a review of that later in the year. But as of now, this is for the comic. That's why the book is back, or the movie's back there instead of like being up here at the end or whatever. It's for this. It's for this. And originally I went through. I've had this for honestly a super long time. I bought the comic for a super long time ago, and I had the whole series for quite a while. I read the first one a long time ago, and I barely even remembered anything. I read it like once, and then that was it. And I only had issues 1 and 2 at the time, or volume 1 and 2 at the time. And I was waiting for all the other color issues to come out, because when I saw the movie, I was in college. It was 10 years ago, because I started college in 2010. So it was 10 years ago when that movie came out. At the time, it was super funny, because I remember thinking, in college, I was like, I want to write like a super nerdy, funny story that references like all the nerdy stuff that I love, video games and anime and all that. And then I saw the trailer for the movie, and I was like, oh, too late. Like it's already been done. So I thought it was super fun. I was like, this is the exact thing I wanted to do. And now it's, I can do something different. But I just thought it was really fun. I was like, I want to do something like that. And then as soon as I had that thought in my head, the trailer came out. I was like, it's already been done, and it's done so well. Love the movie. Played the game after that, and then I was like, of course I have to read the comics at some point. I was just way behind, so eventually I was like, I'm gonna get it. And then I saw that, you could get that full collection that has like the cool 16-bit poster and stuff, and it's all the books together. And then I was like, well, I saw issue 1 of this in color, and I was like, I can just wait. I can hold out. I'm already so far behind. Why not hold out? And that's what I did. I eventually waited, and I had all of them, and I've had all 6 volumes. Honestly, I probably had them for like over a year and a half. Whenever 6 came out, I probably got it months after that, and then I finally like just now decided to do it. And it was originally for Free Comic Book Day returning. That was my plan, was to do. It was gonna be like I was gonna do a review for each one, but I got kids, so I didn't really have time to do that. I didn't even finish it until very recently anyway, and obviously it's no longer August. That was like the whole month of August was going to be like my special comic review month, so check that out if you're interested. I did all of The Walking Dead. I finally finished that as well. I finally finished Compendium 4. I did the Django Zorro comic, and then this was going to be it, and then I was going to do my Futurama Simpsons crossover, which I'm still going to do. I'm going to read that, and then I have Paper Girls Book 1, so those reviews will still be coming out. They just won't be within the month of August as I initially planned, but hey, kids, what can you do? So love the series. Also, I'm wearing this shirt. It is the only thing that I have that even slightly references Scott Pilgrim, but it is The Boys, so I thought it was the appropriate shirt to wear. But I love it. I love every issue of it. I really enjoyed going through, and especially having watched the movie so many times and playing the game. So for anyone who hadn't played the game is like right in the middle. So you go like, the movie has the least amount of content as far as the whole story, and then you go to the game and it's like, oh, she has a robotic arm that can stretch out. I didn't know that. They didn't have that in the movie. And then you, of course, read the comic, and it's like, oh, they were actually cheating with each other. I didn't know that either. That's not in the game. So it's funny, like, going through the layers. It's like, step 1 is watching Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and you get, like, a very basic, here's 7 evil ex-boyfriends, evil exes. And, you go through the whole process, and, like, it's a really great film and everything. Then you go 1 layer deeper. You get to the game, and it's like, okay, so, what's the whole deal with, Knives' dad and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, you have to fight him, and there's little stuff that technically you actually fight him in the game, but obviously that doesn't happen in the comic. But it was like, oh, this is really interesting. So you get like extra little layers, and that's how I found out. I got a little deeper sense with Nega Scott, which actually, once again, just like with Knives' dad, you fight him in the game. You fight Nega Scott in the game, but in the comic, it was much simpler. It was a lot more of the actual emotional element. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I was like, I didn't see that coming. So I thought it was kind of cool, just expecting certain things and being like, oh, they don't actually fight. And this wasn't really a fight with the evil version of himself. It was more of him dealing with the mental anguish of the things that happened throughout the story. And I'm like, that was more emotional than I thought it was. It was a quick moment. It was intense, but I was like, that was definitely more based on emotion than just like, here's an evil version of you, Scott. Go fight it. So I was like, oh, I didn't understand that. I didn't get that from. Of course, not the movie. They really made it funny, but oddly enough, I think the movie probably ties in a little bit more with the actual story than the game does, because it's just an evil version and you fight it in the graveyard. But I thought it was cool. I really love going through it and being like, oh, there's that exact line. That they use a ton of lines, in the movie are directly pulled from the series, throughout the comics, and I loved it. I really also, that's another random thing. I was reading it and it was a dumb thing that I think perfectly fits for this. Is this now a comic? Because technically it's in color. It's not a graphic novel anymore because it's not black and white. So is it technically a comic now that it's in color, or is it still just? Would you just call it like a colorized graphic novel? So I just wanted to throw that out there because I was like, that's a dumb thing to think. But I was just like, I think that's like the whole point of graphic novels is that they're technically black and white. And now that this is technically in color, does that just make it a comic book? Something to think about, I guess. But love the whole thing, like I said, going through, having all the different lines and be like, oh, that's where that line was, in the film. And it was either said by a different person or something was done by a completely different person. The stuff with Ramona and her ex, who I totally can't remember, which is ex number 4. I can't remember her name, but in the movie, she was the one who would get killed from being touched on the back of her knee, and that's what kind of did the KO there, and she died. And she died from orgasm. But in the comic, they actually use that on Envy, and she doesn't die from it. It just she quivers. We'll go with that. She quivers, and then that ends that battle. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then of course the chicken isn't vegan. I will say I like that part more in the movie where it was like, it was like, oh, gelato isn't vegan, and then you only took a plate of chicken parmesan. It's like, chicken isn't vegan? That's like one of my favorite lines in the whole movie where Envy just like gasps and looks at him. He's just like, chicken isn't vegan? That's one of my favorite parts. So I did like that more in the movie just because of how funny it was. But also, man, Todd is an absolute twat in the comics. Like, he is a cocky cock. Like, it was very appropriate in the comics. I was just like, man, when you skim through in the movies, people are just the evil X's. And some of them really are like that. Like, honestly, I can't even remember his name. But the second evil X, he really is the same in the movie. Like, he just comes through, like, he punches him, and then it's like, oh, you got beat up. Like, he actually does take a little bit of a break on him, and they talk a bit, and then Scott pisses him off, and then he's like, kiss Ramona's sweet ass goodbye, and then he's like, oh, hey, look at the, can you grind this rail? And it actually is kind of like it is in the movie. But when Todd comes into play, it plays out way longer than I thought, because, in the movie, it's super fast, like, punches him through, they do the base battle, everything's good to go. And in the comic, there's many layers to this. They go to a flea market, which I thought was the funniest challenge ever, because they go in, it's like, it's horrible and stuff, and it's just like, oh, so they're in a flea market and everything's super cheap, and it's just like, I don't know what to do. I was like, that's so dumb, but it was so funny to me just watching that, because I'm like, everything's super cheap, and they're just like putting on random clothes and stuff, and I was like, this is really funny. I just thought that was a really good joke where it was just like, it's so terrible, and the challenge was like, don't buy everything that's super cheap, and that was literally it, just go from one end to the other, and I'm like, this is silly. This is really silly, but it worked so well to me. I was just like, this is funny. I like this. So I like how, things got expanded, the Todd actually cheating and all this other stuff, I know they say her name, but the one with the robotic arm or whatever, it's just like, oh, at one point she teleports, which is another thing that you get a whole lot more of in the, throughout the series than you do in the film, where it's just like random things just happen, and they're just like, like when Scott fights in the very beginning, it's just like he fights Matthew Patel, and it's like, doesn't he know Scott's like the best fighter ever? And they just reference stuff, and it's just like, oh, at one point when they're arguing with the drummer, the robotic arm woman, she's just teleporting, and if he's about to like hit her, and it's like, Envy, she's teleporting, and it's just like, that's not a big deal, like she's just teleporting out, and then like just random stuff. Wallace's boyfriend is psychic, and I'm just like, it's just stuff in the universe. It's just there, and I was like, okay, it's really fun to get like more of an expansion on that, where it just really is a part of it. It's like Scott getting the sword, and he's like, man, I'm really glad I took that longsword proficiency in like 2nd grade. It's just little stuff like that, and he does that twice too. He says that about something else earlier on, where he's like, dang, I wish I did this. instead of something else, like some other proficiency. And I thought that was funny. Another great thing about this, I knew there were some of the, there's a lot of free comic book day stuff. The free comic book day story is in one of these. I forgot. It's in between one of the volumes. So I got to read that as well. So that was pretty cool. And he's trying to pick out drinks, and it's like, this does +4 this and +3. You always go for the one that does not take away intelligence, by the way. I know he's dumb in general, but I'm like, this clearly says like -1 intelligence, and the other one had like plus everything. You just go plus everything. But that's Scott Pilgrim. So I was just looking at him like, just go with plus everything. That's what you do. If anything's negative, you don't do that. Just plus everything. So just a little bit of advice. Not that we live in that world, but just saying, plus everything is the way to go. Unless you have like a very specific challenge. I don't know. Just saying. But I love the way the series kind of ends up playing out, the way they kind of go through the characters. Like I said, going from beginning to end, knowing like bits and pieces from the movie, knowing a tiny bit more, because of the comics, because I've technically fought, like the super crazy version of Gideon at the end of the game and stuff like that. So I'm like, I expected to see him in that way, and just the way that was handled and all this other stuff. I was like, this is really interesting, like having all these memories. And obviously I haven't played the game in nearly 10 years because of all the issues with that. And I'm not hooking up my 360, I'll be honest. So it was just fun. It was fun going through it and just being like, man, I remember that line from the movie. I remember this scene from the movie. Oh, I remember this being different because this line used to be in this place in the movie, or they did it this way in the game and stuff like that. And I was like, it's really fun. Like, I would honestly highly recommend going through all 3 versions and just seeing how different the story plays out, going from the movie to the game to the original series. If you have not done that yet, I highly, genuinely highly recommend it, because the story is fantastic, 100%. Whether it's condensed for the film or, even for the game, it's all good. Like, the condensed versions are great. The full version is fantastic. Also, if you happen to get this, you'll get, a bunch of extras. Like, each one has, sketches in the back. Like I said, the free comic book day comic, mini comics, other ads, posters, shirt designs, random pictures and stuff like that. This is super nerdy, but for my G4 fans out there, Blair Butler is in one of these, and I was like, I know her, and I lost my mind because I was just like, I know her from G4. So I was like, Blair Butler is in a picture in one of the back of the things because she was showing off her shirt, and I was just like, that's sweet. I don't know, it was just a nerdy thing to be hype about. So highly recommend picking this up if you haven't already. If you really love it and you already have it in black and white, it might be worth it. I know, for some people, you might pick it up twice, you might not pick it up. I got this. You can also buy it even smaller now, because I think now they've put out even newer versions of the color, which I think is 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 all together. So it's even simpler now. You don't have to have 6 individual books. You can just have, I would assume they just do it as 2, because like I said, the first one is 1, 2, and 3. So I doubt they would do 1, 2, and 3, and then 3 and 4. Or 4 and 5, and then do 6 by itself. So I would assume 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. You can probably just get in 2 large books. But a fantastic read. Like I said, just really wanted to do this because it took me forever. Obviously, I'm 10 years behind the movie, so I'm way late on actually finally getting the full deep story of Scott Pilgrim. So I absolutely loved it. I loved all the references, all the shirts and stuff he wore. I think it was probably here. Yep, Scott Pilgrim gets it together. Doing the reference to Sonic. Amazing. I love that one. I wish this is the only time where I was like, dang, I wish this was it was binded differently, but I was fine. It was just just like, dang. But all the references are absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna slowly look at my thing. Bing, got him. There we go. I loved all the references. Young Neil has a Deathly Hollow shirt on, towards the end of the series and stuff like that. The relationships of the characters as they go back and forth. We get introduced to Scott's parents at the very end. He kicks his brother in the face because he thought he was Gideon. Super funny. I just love the way they go through the story, how things are handled, subspace, all these magical elements and all these things just being real and stuff like that. And then there are some emotional moments where it's just the stuff with Envy Adams I thought was actually really well done. How she treated Scott, and then also how she was treated by Todd, and the whole stuff about him punching a hole in the moon and things like that. And she's her not realizing it, and then Ramona being like, hey, I hate to tell you, but he did that for me first. And she's like, is that why there are 2 holes in the moon? It's like, yeah. And it was just dang, that's effed up. And it was just really entertaining. And then it got funny because they come out and the panties are literally just on the top of his head, and I was just like, this is so ridiculous. But loved it the whole way through. Crash and the Boys, pretty sick. I really like Crash and the Boys. It was just fun. It was just fun. Also, just because I think it's a random thing that might come up at some point. If I had to go through all of the Evil X's, just looking at the random pictures here, I always feel like Todd was my favorite from the movie. That could just be a Brandon Routh thing because I think he's fantastic. which is because he is fantastic. There it is. But I do think the Todd Ingram stuff was probably my favorite. It was definitely the one that lasted the longest, and I think it had the most emotional impact across the board for the characters because it wasn't just it was the thing that affected everyone. It was like this isn't just about Ramona's past coming to attack Scott. This is also affecting Scott personally because he's dealing with his ex, like his giant evil ex, and then she deals with Ramona's evil ex, who is her current boyfriend, who they'd been friends since they were kids, and then it turns out that he was cheating on her, and all the stuff that comes out of that, and it's like, oh, that was, like there's a lot of deep stuff, and you can't hate on like a flea market madness, so it's a lot of good stuff. So I'd say, as far as the content that you get per evil ex, definitely Todd's like number one for sure. It's definitely the longest one. I mean, Matthew shows up, he dies at the end. Can't even think of the dude's name, but obviously the second evil ex, he dies pretty quick too, and that's about it. And then Todd comes in pretty fast. The girlfriend, she does last for a minute, but not too much really ends up coming out of her character, I would say personally, as far as, if we're going like in depth with things, we definitely get some stuff from her, and the fact that she's the one that taught Ramona about subspace and how, obviously she's like a ninja in training and things like that. So I thought it was pretty cool. But Todd definitely gives you like, without a doubt, like the most stuff. And then as it gets to like the Katayanagi twins, I thought that was interesting too, but that had more to do with the fact that like Scott, Ramona finding out about what Scott had done, and then the issues with their relationship and stuff like that. So that was fun just for watching how, like, figuring out how that was going to end up taking place, and just the weirdness of Ramona just like poof, she disappeared, and then it's like, I don't know what's happening in the story now. So it was really entertaining, and the time skip that they do, which I thought was really funny, where they talk about like, oh man, it's been like years, and it's like that was in May, and I was like, I bet that was super funny when you read it, because I'm like, I know that was a joke based on the fact that the series took time to come out. So I was like, I know that they were joking about the actual time of the series, and it's like that was like in May when we did that, and it's like that was definitely a joke based on when the series originally was coming out. They make jokes about like, oh, maybe we'll save that for like volume 3 and stuff like that, which they technically never do really talk about Ramona's job. Like, technically speaking, I don't think they really reference what she actually did, like her real job. They probably said a little bit, but they didn't really talk about it as much as I thought they would. But I love them talking about like, oh, Crashing the Boys, like, oh, maybe that'll play a big role at the end of the volume, or like, oh, well, all this stuff was happening. Steven talking about how he was getting. It's like, yeah, you seem busy. It was back in like volume 3 and stuff, but you were pretty busy, so I didn't tell you about it. And it was just like, this is silly. This is really silly, very fourth wall breaking stuff. So I enjoyed that. But all in all, fantastic series. You already knew that. That's probably why you're checking this out, just to see my thoughts on it. Love the movie. Love the game. Finally went through all this stuff in glorious color. And the coloring is really well done. I would highly recommend, if you can just like find it, just find it in the store. Maybe not so much right now, but you go to a store and find it. Just check it out. Like, if you're very familiar with it and you've read it a lot in black and white, they even have some stuff in here when they talk about like Ramona's hair color. There's a moment, I think it's when she changes her hair for the second time, and they make the joke like, oh, is that your natural hair color? And they even put a note in there like, this was funnier in black and white, because obviously her hair would just be black, because all the colors are they're just dark colors, so her hair is always black. So I was like, I bet that would be funnier, in black and white. But I thought it was cool that they put that note like, no, this was funnier, in black and white than it is in color, because you actually see him asking a question. But even in that, it's still funny, because it's Scott asking a really dumb question. Like, she changed her hair twice, and then he's just like, is that your natural hair color? Even without it being black and white, Scott was asking a very stupid question, and it made it funny, because I'm like, she just changed her hair, and you talked about it, and then you asked if that was her natural hair color. Probably not. Like, her deal. It's probably not. Also, totally random, because I bet everybody talks about this at some way. Another thing outside of the X's, favorite hairstyle is definitely long hair Ramona with the dark blue hair. Probably because blue is my favorite color, and I thought that was a really great shade of blue. Her with the long dark blue hair, definitely my favorite look as far as her hairstyle. So that's another thing, because I'm sure that's one of the random things people talk about, like, what's your favorite design and stuff like that. The long dark blue hair I thought was actually really cool, and I also love the fact that they referenced that way later in the comic, because they mentioned it early on with Scott and his long hair, and they finally did it to Ramon like way at the end with the Katayanagi twins, like, oh, we've never seen your hair so long, and then that kind of freaked her out. I was like, that's funny, they haven't referenced that in a super long time, like people talking about haircuts. So thought that was a good callback. But love the series, absolutely enjoyed it. Would love to know your thoughts on all things Scott Pilgrim, movie, game, comics. I would love it if they did an animated show. Like, Adult Swim had like a little thing where they animated, it was the flashback for when Scott went to rescue Kim, it's like you can probably find it on YouTube actually, and it's only a couple minutes long, but like they animated that, and oddly enough, Mae Whitman, who played the evil X ninja, the ninja evil X in the film, she actually voiced Kim. I think it was Kim that she voiced, or maybe it was their friend Stacy. I'm horrible with names, especially for the characters that like came in kind of later on. I also thought they were gonna do more with her. I was really surprised that she came in, and it was like that was it with her character, and it was just they kind of talked about and went through that moment of the iffy things that happened between them and stuff like, and her feelings towards Scott. I was really surprised that she didn't end up coming back like in the final volume or anything. I was honestly kind of surprised. I was like, oh, she's really like gone. I thought it would do a little bit more, so I was surprised by that. But I thought it was good. I was just like, oh, I was kind of shocked. It's one of those things like, especially reading it all together, is like an end of the series type thing where like every character comes back, and it's like that's not real life, and it's like that it's not. So I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, why would she randomly just come back? But I thought she would, just because that's what was in my head. Like, every character has to come back. And it's like, not really. But that's what I was thinking in my head. But all in all, love it for sure. Would love to see an animated show. I don't think it's too late. It's the perfect time, if anything. I mean, just another Scott Pilgrim thing. Why not? It would look fantastic animated, too. I think the show would be great. But I highly recommend looking up the animation if you've never seen it. It was an Adult Swim thing. And it definitely seemed like they were kind of hinting at it. I think it was when the movie had come out, too. It was, probably a year or so later. Or maybe it was around the same time, and it's a couple minutes long. It's probably like 5 or 7 minutes if I'm not mistaken. It's probably way shorter. It's been forever since I've seen it, but it was really well done. It was just like, it was animated, it was voiced. Michael Cera did do Scott in that one, and Mae Whitman did Kim, or it was their other friend. Like I said, I can't really remember who was actually in that specific scene that they showed, or who all they actually put in it, but it was well done. It was like, this would be sweet. I would love to see Scott Pilgrim animated, and they really should do it. It would be great for animation. It would be super hard to license. I think it would be just like the movie, but even more difficult, because I'm sure they had to pay for some of the stuff they did, and if they went through all the references that they have in this, they'd probably be paying a decent little chunk of change. So I still think it would be worth it. But all in all, I love Scott Pilgrim. I finally have experienced all of Scott Pilgrim as far as I know. So if there's something I'm missing, movie, game, comic. If there's something else, I've even read, like I said, the extra comics, I've seen the ads, free comic book day comic is in there, all that stuff. So if there's something I'm missing, definitely let me know. I don't have any Scott Pilgrim shirts. Like I said, all I have is this boys Scott Pilgrim crossover shirt. So I should get something there. But if you guys got anything, definitely let me know. But all in all, we'd love to know your thoughts on Scott Pilgrim, all things Scott Pilgrim. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.